There's no better way to program your subconscious mind than listening to positive statements over and over. And there's no better way to do that than in a semi-meditative alpha brainwave state. I've created 3 prosperity meditations on hightimelinebooks.com to help you do just that. And for a limited time, you can get all 3 for the price of 2. So take your life to a higher vibe. Check them all out at hightimelinebooks.com. Welcome to the Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thank you so much for joining us. Typically, we read a weekly column that's published every week on MMAcycles.com by Ray Merriman. But this week, Ray is at a conference in Orlando, and ironically, our own Elisa Dixon is at the same conference, so hopefully they're chatting it up. And in replace of the column, we're going to go back to a back section of the Forecast 2025 book and audiobook, although this was not in the audiobook. This is part that was not, written in September 2024, and you're going to hear how accurate this astrology interpretation of this period has been. This section is entitled The Capricorn Ingress, the Winter Solstice, and that was on December 21st, 2024 at 4:22 a.m. in Washington, D.C. If you'd like to see the chart, it will be on the published article at MMAcycles.com. The free forecast link is right up at the top right side of the webpage. And in this winter solstice chart for the United States, the Sun, the leader of the nation, is in the second house of finances and the national treasury. It is a favorable trine aspect to the midheaven, suggesting the White House will place a focus on business, the economy, and people's finances. The ascendant is Scorpio, which also is a sign that highlights the nation's finances. However, this time it only concerns debt, whereas the second house pertains to credit, assets, and savings. The two are in conflict, suggesting that the nation is accruing healthy revenues. The people are paying plenty of taxes this season, but probably also accruing unhealthy levels of debt, both individually and nationally. The two rulers of Scorpio, Mars and Pluto, are in conflict, as they are in opposition to one another with Mars retrograde. On the one hand, there was a strong urge to reform and make sweeping and vast changes in the government, especially concerning its finances. On the other hand, another prong of the government's attention is the urge to completely sweep out dissenters, or those who challenge the government's authority as enlightened leaders, quote-unquote. Scorpio rising with Mars retrograde and in opposition to its co-ruler Pluto can be a revenge-minded cleaning initiative. Will the intense drive to reform the government and these perceived deep state or other perceived enemies of the state be conducted with fairness and compassion, or will it be ruthless, coercive, and violent? In either event, many people, directly or indirectly connected to the government, may find their roles terminated. This is an aspect of the bully. And since it's in the 9th house of foreign nations, there may be a foreign nation that is labeled as a bully or labels the U.S. as a bully. And this results in threats of conflict and even war. The possibility of an organized assassination attempt cannot be ruled out here, perhaps sponsored by a foreign entity. Let me just remind you that Ray Merriman wrote this in September, the election had not happened, and it was published in December. With Mars, the ruling planet in Leo of the 9th house of foreign nations and immigrants, there may also begin efforts of mass deportations or a massive reform of border controls. Additionally, this effort may gather momentum if there are any cases of violence involving the presence of illegal immigrants in the country. This is not a time for illegal immigrants to be highly visible and in violation of the nation's laws, especially if violence is involved. Mars-Pluto contacts alone can indicate a heightened sense of danger, potential violence, and assassination attempts. In the 9th house, it can be associated with borders, immigration issues, and universities, places of learning, where violent protests may erupt. Another important signature that stands out is Uranus, on the cusp of the 7th house, descendant. This house represents the nation's allies and partners. It may also pertain to concepts of marriage or separations that attract the public attention. In the first case, America may find new alliances are possible, but it could also mean old alliances are separating, departing from the United States. Events arise quite suddenly and unexpectedly in this area. If the U.S. wishes to maintain these relationships, it will have to be prepared for new demands, or the U.S. is the one making new demands, especially in money matters, and it must be prepared for other nations to rebel against these demands. The year does not appear to begin very smoothly or evenly. There are a number of unexpected surprises, as suggested by Uranus on an angle in Taurus, a money sign. But there is also the matter of Mercury, of communications, rising, and in its detriment sign of Sagittarius. Furthermore, it is part of a mutable grand square involving the Moon in Virgo, which is weak, Jupiter in Gemini, also in detriment and hence weak, and Saturn in Pisces. With Saturn involved in a hard multiple aspect formation, tensions can run high. This is an aspect of potential frustration. These frustrations might have to do with laws, demands, or resistance from others that can cause delays. Leaders want to get things moving, but criticisms and demands may hamper them to prove the merits of the changes desired. Since Mercury is the rising planet and in its detriment, it is important for leaders to understand the importance of accurate and sober communications. In Sagittarius, Mercury has a tendency to see the broader picture and thus be optimistic, even exaggerative. But in square to both the Moon in Virgo and Saturn in Pisces, the devil may be in the details, which, for Mercury in Sagittarius, seems overly petty and obstructive. Thus, there is a sense that big things are underway, and there is also a sense of frustration in negotiating with those who are perceived to be obstructive or minimalistic in their macro views. Specific periods highlighted in the winter. Resolutions to conflicts may find some light January 12th to 14th when Mars, of aggression, enters into a harmonious trine to Neptune, of peace, compassion, and gentleness, while the Sun enters a trine to Uranus, original ideas and novel solutions. Heliocentric Mercury will also begin a 2-week jaunt through Sagittarius, January 13th through 23rd, which can give a lift of optimism to negotiations. However, leaders will have to be careful not to over-exaggerate. It can also indicate a sharp move in several financial markets like precious metals. Additionally, the full moon on January 13th can coincide with huge snowstorms and extreme cold temperatures within a day or two. The optimism of the past couple of days now takes a more serious tone from January 13th through February 10th, and especially January 14th through 30th, as Saturn semi-squares Pluto. During this same period, the Sun opposes Mars retrograde, Venus conjoins Saturn, and the Sun conjoins Pluto. It appears that some leaders are not willing to break from their hardened views. They still want revenge. But at least negotiations are taking place and opposing sides are serious. Everyone is looking for some kind of breakthrough, perhaps a new idea that has interesting possibilities, even if it has been tried before. New ideas can gain traction as all sides are open to considering them. But if any side is fanatical and unyielding, these talks will not go anywhere. Hardliners, fanatics, can still depress the narrative and keep tensions high. This can sabotage the process and even lead to more violence. Violence itself may be the result of sabotage by one leader, nation, or group saying one thing, but then violating what they agreed to do. Another time band for potential breakthrough in world conflicts arises January 28th through February 4th. Here we find Mercury entering the innovative sign of Aquarius under an Aquarius new moon. Furthermore, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, is turning stationary direct. Leaders are starting to think of the masses rather than themselves. Many want to get onto a new track in life for their citizens. They want to end the old squabbles and start new paths. This is a favorable time for technology or any invention that can benefit the masses. It can also initiate sharp price moves in financial markets. With Jupiter and Uranus both changing directions, it either indicates a low from which prices rally smartly, or a high, a crest, from which prices suddenly drop. It is a strong reversal of the trend interval. On February 23rd, Mars finally turns direct, and matters soon turn around in a more constructive fashion. This happens just after Mercury and the Sun both enter Pisces from February 14th to 18th. Themes of compassion and peace working towards a more ideal world, even if a little fantasy-like, are in the air. People are more romantic or exhibiting a sense of romanticism in thought, which is positive. It is favorable for theater, arts, and music. The period of gentleness, kindness, and romance comes to an end March 2nd and 3rd as Venus turns retrograde in Aries, which is its detriment sign. While Mercury also enters Aries, the sign of aggression and/or of assertiveness. Now leaders are demanding attention to their needs and wants. Mars, the ruler of Aries, is still debilitated in Cancer, so this may be a case of whining, complaining, and basically acting childish, being too easily offended, and exhibiting temper tantrums. Leaders, everybody really, need to grow up and act more adult-like because childish behavior gains no support. It makes one look weak. So this is a period where the strong and the weak may openly combat one another. The strong win, the weak lose. It does not pay to be passive-aggressive now, where one thing is spoken, but the actions belie an entirely different agenda. It also sets into motion a 6-week period of Venus retrograde, where central bank policies may suddenly change and cause disruption in financial markets. Currency markets are vulnerable to major reversal of trends. On a personal level, this is not the best time to undergo cosmetic surgery or purchase expensive items that turn out to be not worth the cost. Lovers from the past may re-enter one's life. It may be exciting at first, but ultimately it may end up the same way it left off before, with dissension and quarrels. Passion may be there, but love involves more than passion. It requires harmony and sacrifice, true sharing of decisions, and not self-serving. It's about we, not me, if you want it to work. Leaders may try to frame their policies in terms of what is best for all of us, when, in actuality, it personally benefits them more than everyone else. Winter ends with more conflicts between serious thinking versus unrealistic fantasies, March 12 through 20. As the Sun leaves Pisces for Aries, it conjoins Saturn and Neptune. It's a preview of the Aries vortex looming ahead when divisions are at their peak, along with propaganda designed to mislead people into believing falsehoods and personal agendas. Also, Mercury turns retrograde on March 15th and joins Venus, which is already retrograde, furthering the trend whereby it is difficult to see what is real, given the effort of others to manipulate the narrative to present a facade of things their way. This is a time of heavy propaganda, so be careful what you believe. Facts may be lacking, and you can't make an informed decision without the right facts and sufficient information. So, ask questions, and don't act solely according to intuition, unless it warns you to be careful and thus acquire needed information. With the lunar eclipse of March 14th, there may be reports of heavy rainfalls, even floods threatening life and crop growth or harvest. It can also indicate disappointment in others who give you hope and then turn out to be frightened about living up to their own bravado. So go forward on facts, not hopes, during this period. trust, but also verify before putting yourself in a vulnerable position with unreliable or deceptive people. And that was the forecast for this winter, written last fall. What an incredible piece. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you back on the Fun Astrology Podcast on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.